Amnes here, Real Estate Wholesalers Club, and welcome to the Saturday Shut Up Money Show, where we're all about helping you get to that first deal shut up money. That's that first deal paycheck. I talk about it all the time. Every week I say that. I say the same thing every week. That shut up money is important. That shut up money changes everything in your life. And I put a post on on Facebook last night. I said, I don't always listen to Motorhead, but when I do, the other people at the stoplight do too. Hashtag shut up money. There's a confidence that comes along with having some of that shut up money to know that you can go out there and create what seems like a profit money for yourself outside of a job, outside of clocking in and clocking out, and you're able to create money out of what seems to be thin air. Yeah, that does something to your psyche. It really does. So anyway, if you want to participate today, you're watching out there in the world on some platform. It might be Periscope, it might be YouTube today, it might be on the Facebook. Okay, if you're there and you want to participate inside the Zoom room here, you're welcome to do so. You can join us by visiting www.zoomjustin.com. That's zoomjustin.com. Okay, bring your cue, and we might have some A's for you for that. So the password, if it asks you for one, you guys know it's money. Money. That's right. All right. The password's always money. I don't care what the question is. All right. Today we do have a special guest. His name is Logan Hassinger. Am I saying it correct?
Yeah,
okay.
You got it, Hassinger.
All right. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a special guest here. I wanted to have him on today because he's got a pretty interesting story. His business evolved after the 2008. You guys know the 2008 crash, real estate boom, ugly, gross. I took a hit too. I know what that's like. You guys, some of you have heard my story. I kind of had to start over after that. This gentleman here, he saw some opportunity in it and made a pivot. And I thought he would be a great guest to have because, we're kind of in the middle of a crisis right now, aren't we? And we're not sure where the economy is going to go. We're not sure where the real estate market's going to go. And we know there's going to be a lot of people, we think, going through foreclosure, losing homes. Scary. Hopefully you're not worried about that. Okay. But there's going to be, we think, a lot of people. And so this gentleman here is an expert in creative real estate, an expert in working with homeowners that are, in a situation like this. So right. Let's go ahead and introduce Logan Hassinger. Hey, sir. Thank you. Where are you coming from? Out of Dallas, Texas?
Yeah. Right in the middle of the airport. So Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'd give you the city of Bedford, but most people have no clue where some of these suburbs are.
Well, welcome today to the Shut Up Money Show, man. We don't really have a format here. I want you to feel free to tell us where your website is or what you may have to offer on the market or for free. Either way, man.
No, yeah, I love it, man. I appreciate you having me on, and appreciate the introduction. And our focus is performing and non-performing notes. We, like Justin said, we kind of pivoted from owning rental properties and doing a few fix and flips. Weren't really heavy in that, but transitioned into buying notes. So the overall strategy there was to get into it and work with homeowners. There's obviously a lot of distressed debt at any point in time, but we expect that to be on the rise here pretty soon. So that's where we primarily focus. And at the very beginning of it all, it started with just trying to create some passive income for ourselves and grow something.
Can you tell us the story? Can you kind of back up to you said you were a landlord and doing some fix and flipping, and some of us out here have some of that experience too, a little bit of dabbling in some of that. But a shift happened, a change happened. Can you kind of tell us the story of how you started to recognize this opportunity and what kind of struck a chord with you?
Yeah. So in about probably 2013, 2014 is when we were getting going with rental properties. We got up to about 10 doors just here in the local backyard of the DFW market. I wasn't trying to overcomplicate the strategy, just trying to replicate it from others that were doing it. So
Sure.
bought low, like anybody else should be trying to do, and putting processes and procedures in place, using Buildium property management software, trying to look to scale it. That was the overall goal, was get as many doors under management that were ours, and
Yeah.
create cash flow that we could leave the job.
Sure.
Pretty standard strategy for a lot of intro real estate. So sitting on let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties, and buying so low and seeing the appreciation that we naturally had in the DFW market, I felt like it was a good time to shift that equity into something else. And I was looking for something more scalable. I was realizing that I didn't really like all the doors and all the tenant calls, and we had an online portal. They could log in and do those things that were more automated, but it still created issues that I didn't think were scalable in the long term. If it were going to be 100 doors, it was going to be 100 problems. So
Yeah.
just basically started selling the rentals, and I started noticing that as each rental came online and we were moving it, the buyers were being more picky. The pricing wasn't where we were expecting it to be, and at the end of the day, we were able to get the pricing that we wanted. It just took longer. So that told me that the market was shifting a little bit,
Yeah.
just with the rental market. And from there, was able to. Every property got worse and worse. For whether it was a tenant fighting us to let us in so that the buyer
Yeah.
could view it with an inspection,
Yeah.
to a dog ripping the crap out of the stuff, and we had
Yeah.
no, because they were sending us pictures that were dated, and
You're talking about like in 2008-ish
no,
area?
this is 2013,
Oh,
2014.
2013. I
Yeah.
see.
So going from there, and just the headaches with the rental properties and the tenants. Like I said, we sold everything. We were sitting on a decent amount of cash, and just happened to be in the car listening to some podcasts, and got introduced to Notes, and that's where it kind of clicked for me. I was like, man, I can manage 100 notes a lot easier than I can 100 doors.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it was the hard part for me was getting over the invest out of your own backyard, because that's all I'd done. I knew my neighborhood, I knew my blocks,
Yeah.
and I knew what to stay away from and what to
Yeah.
attack. And the note piece was, you got to get more comfortable with out of state investing.
Yeah.
And partnered up with a mentor of mine, Dan Zatowski, and really learning. Everybody's told build a team, build a team, build a team, but you don't know what that means until you start building it. And
Right.
getting in contact with people that are rock stars in their markets, and that's really what took us to the next level. So I did some training on the notes, and in general, I knew what they were. I knew just they're not real mailbox money like everybody says they are, but they are more passive than rentals.
Can you explain to us? A lot of us here are wholesalers. I'm a wholesaler. Pretty much been a wholesaler for my whole career. Like I've gotten a little bit into fixing and flipping. I've had a little bit of rental properties too, and some sandwich lease options and things like that. But for the most part, I'm a wholesaler. So, like, I'm really honestly, if you could just give me the ABCs of note investing and what we're talking about, that'd be really helpful.
So in the, if let's just talk about a couple of definitions. So there's performing notes and there's non-performing notes. So performing is pretty standard. The payments are coming in. The borrower's been making their on-time payments. Non-performing could be a few months behind to 10 years behind. We bought everything in between. And then you look at what type of position is the note in. Is it a first position lien or is it a second position lien? I don't touch the seconds. I don't understand enough of the nuances to mess with it. So your first position is, you've got a little bit more security there. And then you look at the different types of foreclosure routes that may take place that strongly dictates, a market that we're going to go into, being judicial versus non-judicial. So understanding those three high level pieces, that kind of helps an investor say, okay, I'm looking for more passive income and I don't really want to have to manage it a lot. So you're probably going to want to take towards the performing notes route. And so what do you do with a performing note? What are you looking for in a particular property? First and foremost, I don't go into any note unless I want to own the property, because at the end of the day, you may have to. Our goal is to work with that borrower nonstop. If they're in trouble, if they're distressed, they've lost a job, whatever it may be, we're there to offer some type of relief, whether it's changing the payment, doing a loan modification of anything. And a loan modification is a fancy word for adjusting anything on the terms of that was originally agreed upon. So going into it, I was used to buying low and selling high. So for me, that meant I was going to go the non-performing route. And it's very similar to a rental property or to a wholesale deal. It's understanding the numbers, but then you introduce a different type of due diligence, which comes into play with title due diligence. So everybody's should be familiar with the title search and what's involved with that. What you're doing with the title search is making sure that you have the right lien position, that there's no other liens that are going to supersede you, an HOA lien, a tax lien, county taxes,
water bill, maybe
water bill, any of those.
Yeah.
So those things can wipe you out. And if you paid 30 grand for $100,000 balance that was owed, and it gets sold at a tax sale and you didn't redeem the taxes, that property's gone. You're $30,000.
Yeah.
And so,
I had somebody yesterday, Logan, sorry to interrupt you, man, but I had somebody yesterday saying that they had run across a motivated seller that was insisting on foregoing title work being done on the property, wanted to go down to the courthouse and just sign a quit claim deed over for some cash in hand. And I was like, man, that is so sketchy.
I mean, so we do that with borrowers, but we're the lien holder. And there's another thing that dictates or that separates different types of notes. There's contract for deeds or land contracts.
Yeah. Can you talk about that too a little bit? We're interested here in the creative side of real estate, and a lot of us are familiar with only lease options and maybe a little bit of subject to, but some of these other ideas, I would like to just expand my mind and our minds, if we can, into some other ideas and strategies. And what does all this, because owner finance can mean a lot of things, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Owner financing in different states has different rules, and understanding those rules and getting with an attorney is the biggest challenge, or I would say not necessarily a challenge, but something that you're going to want to make sure that you check off your list and that you know to the T, which is why we've got stuff in 20 different states, but there's about 4 states that we truly focus on. It may be one-offs and other stuff, but we concentrate in stuff in certain markets because we know those rules and regulations and laws, and we have teams there. So, but back to the contract for deed piece, I will caution you to make sure, again, you look up on whatever your state specific rules are on that. Texas, for example, does not allow for contract for deeds. I think the maximum you can do on a lease option is a year, maybe 2 years. So in lieu of those, some states back in 2008 through 2012, 13, 14 were going through and thought it was a perfect way to create a contract that similar to a mortgage or a note that would allow a borrower to get on a plan for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, make a payment, and upon completion or execution of that contract, then the deed would be signed over. But until then, the deed was in my company's name.
Yeah.
So that was really big all across the country. And
so when they say the deed goes into escrow, that's really what they're talking about, right?
It doesn't even go to escrow. It literally sits in my name, in my company's name or your company's name.
But there's this other piece of paper that says the deal's been done.
Yes, there's a piece of paper that says, "Hey, you owe me money on these terms," and once you complete that contract, then the deed gets signed over to you.
Okay, great. I understand.
Yeah, so that one's it worked back then. And then Dodd-Frank came out.
I
And
see.
a lot of things changed with that because people were using the contract for deeds as a form of predatory lending. Whether it allowed a lender, if need be, to write a contract for $50,000 on a $70,000 home. The borrower is in for a year and a half, and the minute they miss a payment, they just evict them. You don't have to foreclose on a contract for deed because you're a tenant by
Yeah.
by the contract's terms. So
Interesting.
if you're not a borrower, then you don't have access to the same rights that a traditional borrower would have on a deed of
Yeah.
trust or a mortgage. So
Man.
it was favorable to a lender because you just got to evict the tenant and then you moved on.
Yeah.
But that's not what the homeowner thought they were getting into in the very beginning, which is why a lot of states are cracking down on that and either outlawing it or putting regulations around contract for deeds that are so borrower friendly that you might as
Yeah.
well just do a mortgage and or a deed of trust depending on your state.
Interesting. So, contract for deeds synonymous with land contract,
Yep.
also known as owner finance, or
Yeah.
where the original owner is being the banker, so to speak. Got this piece of paper that says the deal's been done. The deed is still in the homeowner's name, the original homeowner.
Yep.
But you're saying that that's because of Dodd-Frank and various state regulations and laws that this is like this is treacherous waters in some cases, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I would. Ohio is moving towards having a lender's license. Well, you can't get a lender's license in Ohio unless you've been a licensed mortgage loan officer for 3 years. So
Yeah.
I don't buy in Ohio.
Yeah. Yeah. Who wants a new career, you know?
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
and I don't plan on originating a lot of stuff. Even though I'm a be the bank type real estate investor, I don't originate a lot of stuff. I'll let the other party originate, and then I'll buy that. And so I know that's kind of what got us talking. Is that so? We partner with a guy out in Georgia, Atlanta, Macon, Columbus, kind of a triangle area of
We've got several people, I think, in the Zoom room here from Atlanta area, and I know there's a bunch watching.
Awesome.
Man. So yeah, shout out to Atlanta.
Yeah, I like the market, man. It's a good market as long as you know which areas you need to be in, and that speaks to the team. I've got a guy out there, my partner, that's a 30-year contractor, runs his own business and knows exactly where to be. Flips homes and does general contracting for a living. So we send him properties, or he'll send us properties that he knows that can work, or we know that can work because of his insight, and then we go from there. So I'll give you an example. We partnered with him on a note where he bought the house as an REO from a bank for 20 grand, puts 10 to 15,000 into it, rehabs it like normal, and then owner finances it, and then partners with us to where we come in, we buy it at a discount of what the note's owed, and I'll give you more. I'll put the numbers out so it's more easily to understand, because the numbers sometimes like, why would somebody sell a note at a discount? And there's a lot of reasons, but
well, he's not into that property very deep. That's why, right?
Yeah. So for example, the loan balance is 85 grand. The borrower borrowed $85,000. My partner's in it for 45. I'm buying the note for 70. He gets his money in between the 70 and the 45, and I get my discount between the 70 and the 85 that's owed to me, because I'm the new lien holder on the property. So now
plus interest, right, over time
at 10% for the next 25 years.
Wow.
So
not bad.
Not only am I taking the stated rate of 10%, but I'm pushing it to more like 12.5 to 13, just simply because I bought it for 70,000 versus the full balance that's owed is 84 or 85.
No, so, that wasn't a contract for deed or land contract.
No, I made sure this is a traditional mortgage and a deed. So this is something a bank would originate from your smallest credit union all the way up to B of A. So this is what they would consider institutional paper. And that's kind of where I'm moving towards, is creating that paper that I have an exit strategy in mind. A lot of guys will go out there and create and do owner financing, and you take a look at their docs, and they are awful.
Yeah.
It's a 2-page promissory note that you found online with a template, and
Yeah.
we drafted up some other docs and then said, here you go, sign this, and then they're not good. And so what it requires you to do if you're buying paper like that is you've got to go back to the borrower and say, hey, I need you to sign all these 100-page documents now that you should have done at the beginning. Why would a borrower? They're skeptical already from a lender coming to them and saying,
Sure.
hey, change your docs up. So it's funny that some of the stuff we've seen in the past when it comes to owner finance notes and buying that. So the way that I combat that is I partner with somebody who does owner financing, but I tell them exactly what I want in the docs, and then their attorney draws them up, and then so I'm buying the paper that I already know that is going to meet my standards.
Yeah.
So that's a key piece to it.
Sure. That's an incredible technique. I don't know if I'm like a lot of listeners out there listening to this that perhaps have never really heard somebody break down a strategy like that before.
Yeah.
Where somebody's actually they purchase the property at a discounted rate, they put some money into the rehab, and then they place an owner finance type buyer, right? And create a note, a mortgage, or I guess sometimes it's called a deed of trust, right?
Yep, depending on the state.
Yeah, and then immediately sell that deed of trust or that mortgage to you or your company for an immediate big chunk of money.
And on top of that original seller financer is getting a down payment from the borrower too. So the contract price could have been for 95. He got a loan for 85. He puts 10 into it to the guy that I'm buying the note from. So not only did he cash in between the 70 and the 45 profits, but also the $10,000 down payment that he got from the borrower.
Yeah. So
because
now
I'm just buying the debt.
Yeah. And so technically, really, the fixing flipper guy, he doesn't really care if that person performs or doesn't because it's out of his hands.
Correct. Yeah. He's done. He's out of the deal. He's made his money, and we compound it and roll into the next one.
Yeah. That's great. What a great story. It's really good. So, where do you see your business going over the next, several two years? Let's say 2 years.
So, I mean, as you alluded to in the very beginning, we're in some different times. There's plenty of articles out there that show numbers of defaults on the rise, or people just not being able to pay come 6 to 12 months down the road. And, I don't know how likely or unlikely that is. But I do strongly believe that there are going to be borrowers that unfortunately have lost a business or worked for a business that is no longer around, and the job is just not there for them to go out and get at the same pay. There's a whole lot of factors going into it, but at the end of the day, I do think that there's going to be a significant pickup in defaulted homes. So for us, it's been a good year and a half, 2 years of kind of just market blasting to a lot of lenders across the country. Set up systems to where we, essentially once a month, twice a month, we'll cold email blast these lenders to say, hey, not sure if you have any loans to sell, but we're here for you if you need to move a loan. And so that's another key strategy that we've been implementing, and we buy from banks every once in a while. It's not a core piece of who we buy from, but the banks are going to be the ones, I think, going forward that are going to have a significant amount of inventory. But also understanding my role in the food chain. Banks, we all know that most banks sell their loans to Fannie and Freddie, and it goes to government-sponsored entities. And then that stuff gets sold to institutional investors and hedge funds, and then it makes its way down through the different chains and finally reaches us. So there's some lag from when that stuff's going to hit the kind of the retail investor, which is where I think we play. But that's kind of where we're focusing on is partnering with banks and hedge funds and other just general funds that are note investors to pick up some of the stuff that they're not looking to keep.
I see. Yeah, I've got kind of a dumb question here, Logan, and then I'd like to open it up the Zoom room here to let other folks ask questions because folks in the Zoom room here, if you want to join us in the Zoom room, we've had some new people pop in here. You can visit us by going to Zoom Justin, www.zoomjustin.com. The password is always money. Okay, so come join us there. And I would like to open it up here and let folks ask questions because Logan's kind of a, he's kind of a creative owner finance expert here. And we don't want to miss the opportunity to get our questions answered on owner finance. I was saying earlier, my knowledge is limited, because there's so many things that you can do on the owner finance side. I don't know them all. I've not done them all. I'm familiar with some of them,
Yeah.
and that's about it. But Logan's got a more comprehensive understanding. But my question is when you were talking about purchasing and notes, the performing and non-performing, I've never understood why anybody would ever want to purchase a non-performing loan. Can you talk about that and what goes on there and how does that ever monetize?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, like I said, that's where we got started. And there's some different due diligence when it goes into a non-performing note and trying to figure out, all right, why would I buy this non-performing note over another one? At the end of the day, it comes down to your ability to identify a borrower's willingness to come to the table and get caught up. So key things that we look for when we're buying a non-performing note is the likelihood of me owning that property is even greater than it were be a performing note. So I've got to want that property if I have to take it back.
I see. Yeah, I heard you mention that earlier, and that's what you're talking about is you want to make sure that this is a house you'd be happy owning.
Yeah, exactly. Whether you've got to rent it out, it's you're really looking at the long-term play. If it doesn't work out with the note, is do I have to rent it out? Can I sell it for a deep discount and still make money? Type of a fire sale type thing. If I've got to sell it to a wholesaler, so we work with a wholesaler.
So if I brought you a house in the war zone and I said, hey, listen, this is a non-performing kind of deal, you're going to go.
Yeah, probably not, because the likelihood of me trying to move that thing down the road or find a good borrower that meets our criteria is just the odds aren't very good. So it's about building a case for the exit, which is I think the key piece that most should have in mind is how am I going to move this down the road? Sure, my immediate goal right today is to create some cash flow. That way I can add to what I've got or build on and quit the job. But so the non-performing note, how it materializes and how you profit from it is I'll give you just a simple case study that we did last February. So we bought in this case, bought a contract for deed in Augusta, Georgia. And the borrower owed, I think at the time, $50,000. And we were able to buy the loan for 18.2, I think it was. Okay. So we paid 18,000 for a debt that was owed of 40,000, 45,000. We had done due diligence. We had people drive by the property. Given the neighborhood and the condition of the property, it looked like the borrower was living there. They were maintaining the home, which is very big. You definitely don't want to see a borrower there that's just let it go to shit, to be honest. So we had a good idea that the borrower was going to want to work with us. Bought the loan. We partner with a firm out in California that does our borrower outreach. They'll contact the borrower on our behalf. I don't ever call the borrower. If they find my number and they call me, that's different. But I don't ever reach out to borrowers. I always have a third party that's licensed because there's debt collection rules that you've got to follow, and you don't want to mess with those. If a borrower does decide to look them up and like, hey, that you didn't call me at the right time, or you didn't find my information, so we'll go down that path.
You called me at 4:30 a.m. What the hell, right?
Exactly. Not legal. May have been 7, 8 o'clock at your time, but their time is when it mattered. Yeah. So got that borrower to speak with our third party. That third party is more of they're a nonprofit. Their job is to get the story of the borrower. That's the most important part versus calling and saying, where's my money? It's more of, hey, I understand you're behind. What's going on? I'd love to chat with you. Your lender is looking to work with you. And what can we do? What can you afford? Do you want to walk away? The lender will let you walk away from the debt. So there's a lot of different things that you can go through. In this case, the borrower decided, I can come to the table with $1,000 They were a good $8,000 in the hole, um, and came to the table with $1,000. Our plan was for 6 months, just make your normal payment you were used to making, which
Yeah.
was $450, $500. They were able to come through, make the 6 month payments, and then what we did was modify the loan. That's kind of the incentive for the borrower to come through. Is we took all those arrears, the missed payments of 8 to 10,000, and just put them onto the back of the loan and brought her current. So she's not paying late
Yeah.
fees every month, and um, gets that bar. Although they're still going to owe it. They're not foregoing it in this case.
Yeah.
We were able to keep them in the home. They're current today
It's
and
nice.
moving down the road. So profit wise, I'm making about 20% yield on an annual basis. So
Yeah.
I'm collecting, the interest. I calculate on the interest payment. You can do interest and principal together, but principal return is not return.
Yeah.
It's not a profit. So I've got amortization tables that I've just key in the key figures that I need, and it spits out how much interest I'm going to collect over the period. And I calculate my yield based on that. So I'm pushing, I think, around 20 on that one. And if I decide to sell, someone else that's looking at this is going to say, okay, the borrower's been making, they're 12 months in. That's great. You've seasoned the note, is how we call it, and they're current, and they owe $45,000, and then they'll pay typically on a performing note anywhere from 70 to 90 cents on the dollar. Granted, I paid close to 30 cents on the dollar, so my spread
Yeah.
is there. Is I bought it
Sure.
for 18, and I'm selling it for closer to 30 to 35.
Yeah.
Now it
Yeah.
takes 12 months. That's the difference here. Is it's not like flipping a house. Can't immediately add value because the value in a note is showing consistency, and that comes from the pay stream. And if you get a good pay stream, the longer you hold it, the more value you should theoretically capture based
Yeah.
off that balance. And so there's a lot of different things that we look
Okay.
at. I don't like buying notes that are in the second half of their amortization. So a 30-year mortgage, and in year 15 or later, that's when that mortgage payment starts to split and there's more principal versus interest. It's not
Yeah.
as appetizing to the next investor. Again, that my whole strategy is understanding what my buyer of the note's going to want down the road, because I don't plan on holding every note for that
Yeah.
long. 2 to 3 years
Wow.
max is what we're looking at. So that
Interesting.
dictates what kind of notes I'm going after too. I may love the property, I may love the borrower, but it's got 6 years left on the mortgage. Well, it's like an 80-20 split of all principal repayment versus interest. That may benefit some buyers out there.
Yeah.
They want a quick return of principal back, and I'll take the stated 8% on the note. That's better than what I'm getting in the CD. And when we have buyers that we partner with that love buying that stuff, and then we've got others that are like, I need a 15% yield just on the interest alone, and it's out there. It's just difficult to find. So you got to
Wow.
have a lot of product, a lot of source coming your way to be able to
Wow.
offer that to your end investor.
Wow. Can you imagine an investment that's paying off 15%, guys, out there? Like, like what is the Fed rate right now? Like near zero.
Yeah,
And you go to the bank, you get like that too. So like, you wonder how the rich, they say, right?
yeah. How the rich get richer.
Yeah, how are they getting, like I'll give you an example. One time I read a book, it was Tony Robbins and Anthony Robbins. I don't know if he likes to be called Tony or not, but I call him Tony. So uh, anyway, in the book, it said that, there's smart ways to handle your money, and you could be putting them into investments making 15, 16 to 20%. And I was like, I'm thinking as hard as I can think. And I'm like, where in the world would that be? Cause
Yeah,
I cannot, yeah, exactly. And I eventually discovered there was that in buying tax
yeah.
liens
Tax
and
tax lead. Yeah,
yeah, stuff like that. But this is also a similar technique. Gosh, I mean, real estate is such a huge, a
there are
huge,
so many opportunities. There's so many exit strategies. There's so many ways to get started. And I know for a lot of people, wholesaling is the way to learn the ropes,
yeah,
understand the movement in a transaction, and once you kind of get that fundamental groundwork built, you're like, okay, I'm thinking I want to pivot over here or go this direction. And that's the beautiful thing about real estate is there's so many areas for people to branch off into. I mean, I thought I was going to go to 100 doors and now I've got 100 notes.
Yeah.
So,
And you don't have to worry about the tenants and the dishwashers and the roof is leaking and the gutter fell off in a storm and you need to call the insurance company on this one. And
yeah, exactly. So insurance, that's a great point. For a lot of our borrowers, whether it is that they don't want to go get insurance themselves, we do enforce what's called a forced placed insurance. So we've got a broker that we work with that'll place insurance on the property for the lender that protects us. Unfortunately, it doesn't protect the borrower, but there's notices that go out there. We do tell them that you need to get homeowners insurance. I don't care who the provider is, but you need to get insurance. And if they don't, then we tack on what's called FPI or forced placed insurance. That protects our position if the house were to go up in flames or some natural disaster, so that our balance is protected. So that's
which is what any mortgage company would do that. Right?
Absolutely. Any mortgage company is going to do FPI as soon as they get notice that their borrower has lapsed on insurance coverage. That's all it is.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting stuff. I want to open up the floor here, guys, in the Zoom room, zoomjustin.com, passwords money. If you're already in here, thanks, guys. We've had at least a dozen people in here or so pretty much the entire time. I know there's got to be some questions. Again, Logan is an owner finance, seller finance, creative real estate expert, and also you can tell he's kind of a genius when it comes to the finance and end of things and how mortgages work and transactions, you name it. So anybody have a question in the Zoom room? Let's take the first question. Anybody have one? Who wants to be first? Nobody?
Nobody? No worries. I can talk for days, man.
Nobody has a question. I figured James Everett would be chiming in, man. But that's okay. That's all right. So it sounds
speechless.
I'm sorry, go ahead, James.
I said I'm speechless at this point. It's a little complicated, but definitely a good direction to go.
You feel like it's complicated? It does seem a little complicated, but
in the very beginning, it absolutely will. Once you do a few, or maybe you partner with somebody, it is simple. The hard part for me was when getting into it was I was so used to going to a title company, signing closing documents, and there was a escrow company in the middle making sure funds were settled. A lot of the notes that I bought was just I wired money to some account that I was told to, and the collateral, the loan documents were supposed to arrive at my house in 15 to 20 days, or it's your servicer's address, wherever you want them sent. So the closing, and you don't have to do it that way. I just happen to partner with a broker that knows his stuff. So, but in general, the closing thing is a different process. How you communicate with your borrower, it's not like a tenant. You can't just call them up and demand payment for the rent or for the mortgage payment because they're behind. You can't force them to do anything. There's 90 days that they get to hang out, and it's going to get reported on their credit. They're going to show a missed payment on their mortgage, but they don't have to pay you for 90 days before you can take action. So a lot of people, that scares people away. Like, well, I need more control of my tenant or my borrower if they decide that they can't pay or don't want to pay. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to understanding the risk that's involved. And I tell a lot of people, if you want to get started in notes, just expect a note to take 2 years before you're going to make some money on it. Now, if you're buying performing notes, that's different. You're gonna get the payment in 30 days of when the servicing is transferred from one servicer to the next. And the servicer, I don't know if I explained in detail about their role, but the servicer is just the intermediary or the middleman between your mortgage borrower and the lender. They're just simply collecting payments. I thought it was actually funny. My house payment on our primary home, I got a letter when coronavirus stuff all started up and said, hey, if you think you can't make your mortgage payment, contact Fannie And I was like, Fannie, I pay my mortgage payment to Chase. I was like, oh, I should have known that. There's a servicer in the middle, Chase Bank, who collects my payment on behalf of Fannie, who owns my loan. So a lot of folks don't understand that piece too. Is there's a middleman that's just there to collect payments. They take the liability away from the lender in terms of your 1099 interest statement. So if you've got a mortgage today and at the end of the tax year you get a statement that says, hey, you paid $2,000 in interest, you get to put that into your taxes at the end of the year. They handle that for me. Any communication with the borrower, they log that. They make sure that we're compliant in terms of reaching out and what we're saying, how we're verifying the borrower when they do call in. There's a lot of different pieces that liability wise that you want your servicer to be there. It's $20 a loan. It's a no brainer. They don't take a fee for how much they collect like a property manager would in rental businesses, but it's $20. They handle everything. You do have to manage them. It's just like anything. You if you have a property manager on staff or you pay one that's just a third party, you should be managing them. It's the same thing with a mortgage servicer. I log in, once a week, check who's paying, check who isn't, check the logs, and then I reach out and follow up with them if I need to. So that's the role of the servicer, and that helps take a lot of the burden off of me trying to always reaching out and collecting payments, because that's what I was doing with the rentals, and I got tired of that.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
terms
definitely.
of complication, trying to think of some things that we've run across that, well, right now I don't want to go too far into details just because there may be other legal action I'm having to take. But right now we bought a mortgage in Anderson, South Carolina, and the seller is refusing to sign a document that properly transfers ownership of us owning the debt. And so we're having to take some legal action there and work that out. But we're not there yet. So understanding the chain of title, which you'll get back in a title report, or an O&E is what it's referred to as sometimes. They're $120, $150 depending on your provider. What they do is scour the county records, pull all the documents that have been recorded, tax liens, HOA liens, water liens, grass liens, you name it, a lien that can be placed on a property or a borrower. And understanding the risk that's involved with that, making sure that, okay, the seller told me I'm buying a first position mortgage. I want to make sure that this is a first position mortgage based on the documents that have been recorded in the county. You match those up, you're good. One thing that we've noticed on very rarely, but it's one thing to check, is you get a property address and it has an APN or a parcel number on it. And then you go to the tax site and it's got a different parcel number. Well, that parcel could have been split up and created into two parcels somewhere down the line. Who knows? But you want to make sure that you're buying the right property that's backing this, because that's your security. The asset, the real estate is your collateral that at the end of the day is protecting your investment. So
Having done 20 deals in 20 states, right?
Yeah.
How are you handling boots on the ground? Do you need that? People checking
Absolutely.
on things? Like what? Do you have staff in 20 states or?
No. So run pretty lean from that standpoint. I was at a notes conference and ran into an individual named Dickie Baldwin. How Dickie helps us is he's been in the industry for 30 years and understands everything there is that takes place with a note transaction, both from the buy to the hold. And what he's done over the last 30 years is has a bunch of connections, whether it be real estate agents, attorneys, locksmiths, because you got to change the locks out on properties, title companies, all kinds of vendors. And what we do is at any note transaction that I've got, I email Dickie Baldwin with baldwinadvisorygroup.com, send him an email with the property addresses and say, hey, I need BPOs on every single property. Cost me about $100. An agent goes out, gets a fair value just from the exterior. We're not allowed in. Gives a condition report based on the neighborhood and gives you some comps and some current listings. That way it allows you to kind of verify what the value of the property is. Then I say, hey, Dickie, I need also a title report. Well, there's vendors out there that run title reports for the big boys. Fannie and Freddie have title reports ran all the time. It's Pro Title USA is who we use on a lot of our stuff. Check them out if you ever need a title report. They can have it to you usually within 2 to 3 days. I don't care if it's a note you're buying or just a property that you're going to buy and flip. You just want to make sure that you've got proper chain. That way you're not running into anything down the road when you try to sell to your end buyer. So he's the guy that coordinates pretty much a lot of our efforts of boots on the ground approach. When it comes to more of the properties that we're looking to take back. So another strategy within notes is, and a lot of people use notes to get into REOs, is I could care less about the borrower. I want the note that's 10 years behind and the borrower just wants to walk away. And that's where that quick claim deed is, or that deed in lieu piece comes into play.
Yeah.
They're only getting into the notes business because they're trying to get properties at cheap rates. And you can do it with notes. And that may be where it starts to pick back up here in the next.
Let's talk about that real quick too. Money. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I've worked hard for everything I've gotten. What kind of money would it take for me to get into the note business like this? Because as a wholesaler, I have honestly run across. I remember that wasn't all that long ago. I ran across an investor that he was a landlord, kind of a tired landlord situation.
Yeah. And
the guy had about 60 non-performing or performing, either one, notes.
Either way, yeah.
Yeah, some are performing, some are non-performing. He had gone from being a landlord into being the banker, you know, and he had a whole bunch of properties. And he was like, I'm old and I just want to get rid of all this. Some of them ain't paying, some of them are. What do I do? I have literally run across that. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, I'm just a wholesaler.
There's an option. There's an option out there. So I also partner with a friend of mine named Brett Berkey. He runs a website called PaperStack, paperstac.com. It's basically a note exchange. Whether you're selling performing and non-performing notes, people come on and they post what they're trying to sell, and then we come on there and buy. Or I've got a lot of stuff on there that we're trying to sell on. But it's a good exchange that allows a novice note investor to understand the process. And
so it's like eBay for notes.
Yes, exactly that. And it's a simplified process. There's an escrow agent in there, so it kind of takes the fear of, like I talked about earlier, I was just wiring funds to a bank account and hoping I got the collateral file.
Yeah.
There's a few other steps involved with them for reasons that are obvious, that you're dealing with a lot of, I would say, early on, or maybe they've been buying for years, who knows. But for the most part, I think the site is geared around towards newer people that are looking to get into the market. It's an MLS for notes, and the process is very streamlined, and documents are created for you. You pay them like a 1% fee on a $50,000 note. You pay 1%. Who cares?
Wow. Yeah.
A couple $100. So there's that resource out there for somebody. But that deal you talked about, I mean, we ran into that here just in Fort Worth. There's a gentleman trying to sell about 35 mostly performing notes that he didn't know what to do. He posted in a Facebook group and a DFW real estate investors group and said, I got 30 owner finance notes. How do I get rid of these?
Yeah.
And I mean, I called him up immediately, had a conversation. He's like, oh, you'll buy these? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you may not like my discount given the note circumstances, but I'll be glad to walk you through everything. We went by the properties, drove by and took photos, and got condition reports and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's not as complicated as it seems. There's a lot of moving parts, I feel like, but there's really 4 or 5 core ones that if you understand, you're going to be good.
It sounds like the non-performing side's a little bit more complicated than or maybe quite a bit more complicated than the performing note side, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most people just like to test the waters with a performing note, a low balance, or even a partial. So that's a lot of, that's a whole nother road that we could go down. And just short and sweet of it is, let's say I've got a mortgage balance of 50,000 and the note's been performing for years and I need access to 20 grand real quick. So Justin, I'll sell you 20 grand. You're going to pay me 20,000 for the next 2 years worth of payments. And if that interest rate works out to you, you're making 12% on your money for the next, 2 years. The payments are just going to be directed to you now. I step out of the middle. The payment flows to you through my servicer, and then you've got into a partial note. You kind of understand what's going on, and allows us to talk and provide insight into a novice note investor who likes partials. I'm able to get my goal of $20,000, so I can go buy another note or invest in an apartment syndication, or go wholesale a deal, whatever it may be. But partials are a great way for new investors to kind of break in and get some high level experience into what note investing is. So
That's great. So if there's somebody out there that has some cash that they want to start getting into this, is there a way that they can contact you, Logan, and kind of, present
Absolutely.
themselves?
So our website is sagenotesinc.com. It's got my contact information on there, email address, submit a form if you got some questions, or you can reach out to me directly. It's my first and last name, Logan Hassinger, at sagenotesinc.com.
I'll also put that in the description, guys, if you're watching this later, on the Facebook and on the Facebook. Why do I say it so hillbilly like? On Facebook and on YouTube and Periscope, so on and so forth. So check us out there, guys, too. But if you fit the bill, if that sounds like you, then don't hesitate to reach out to Logan. And also wanted to ask Logan, as wholesalers here, we're always talking to motivated sellers, whether that's a tired landlord or whether that's somebody who has some kind of a crisis, or maybe a monetary constraints or something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, they're even in pre-foreclosure.
Absolutely.
They are in default with a major bank. What can we do in any scenario, or is there something we can do in any scenario that we could help you in your business or partner with you or?
Absolutely. So we work with a couple agents. The hard part is, like you said, the major banks, they're almost impossible for us to deal with. So I don't even target them. There's too many people in the chain of command that can even make a decision on if they were to sell that loan. So I would say, if you run into a troubled borrower that is wanting to get out of the property, but maybe they're upside down, and they're with a smaller lender, a regional lender, a bank that we could ideally get on the phone with and communicate with their department of risk, is usually who we're trying to go after.
So if we ran into a deal with a homeowner and the guy was behind on payments, and he said, and he was open with us enough to say, hey, this is a loan that I got from so-and-so in town, or it's a private money loan, or it's not like Chase Manhattan or something like this.
Yeah.
That's kind of like prime target territory for you. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what it does is says we can work with that borrower and say, we'll be your fastest short sale close you've ever experienced. We'll approve a short sale, because what you've done as a wholesaler is you've taken a troubled borrower and you've identified the house that you want. You probably already have a buyer lined up in terms of who wants to flip it, or maybe they want to own it. I don't know what the strategy is of the end buyer, but you've got those connections. Now it's, well, how do we get this house that's in underwater or just behind in payments from under that piece?
Yeah.
So I step in and I come in and I say, look, borrower, I'm going to contact your bank and I'm going to work with them. They're not going to have any control on that side. So I'm going to reach out to Joe Blow at, XYZ Bank and say, hey, I noticed that property address 123 Main is having some trouble. Are you interested in selling the loan? Oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah. What do you think? Well, it's a $50,000 balance. How long are they behind? Oh, I think they're a good 2 years behind, whatever it may be. I'll buy it from you for 30. You're already under contract for it for 50, knowing that the house is worth 150. and your other buyer is in it for maybe he's paying you 75. So everybody, it's a win-win for the bank because they've got rid of a property that they don't want to foreclose on.
Yeah.
Most banks, they're not any bank, they're not in the real estate business. They're in the lending business.
Absolutely. They're in the money business. Yeah.
They're not into holding properties and taking that liability. So I solved the bank's problem. I solved the borrower's problem. I solved your problem because you're able to sell the property down to a flipper down the road, and you've got four parties involved there that are getting a win out of it. So that's kind of the joke that I'll tell them. I'll be your fastest short sale, because what's going to happen is I'm going to buy the note, and then you're going to come to me and say, hey, the property is worth 20, but your payoff's 50. No, that's fine. I'll take a payoff of XYZ. And as long as it makes my margins, if I paid 30 for the note and I can turn around and move it in 10, 15 days, I'll sell it to you for 38, 40,000. Okay. Well, you bought it for 50. And then the numbers it makes sense.
I don't know if you guys are listening to say that again, man.
I said there's just a lot of moving parts, but it can be a real win strategy.
Well, it makes sense to me, and I hope that everybody's catching this, because what he just shared is probably, I mean, we've been here for 2 minutes shy of an hour now, and that was the gold nugget that you can put in your pocket and take away. Now, if you're a wholesaler or a real estate investor out there, if you want to be smart, and I want to say smart like me because I do this, but you need to have a piece of paper or a Trello board on Trello.com or whatever, Evernote, whatever your note-taking app is. You need to have a list of people that you run into and that we introduce you to, because you will run into scenarios. I guarantee you will run into a scenario like we just described here, and then you'll be going, oh man, what was that guy's name? What was that guy's phone number? What's his website? Maybe I should ask Justin. And then you're going to be like, hey, Justin, who was that guy? And I'll be like, on what show? On when and where? What was the topic? Okay. Just write it down, because, you run into an ugly house deal. You can make a discounted cash offer. You can make a pretty house offer, a creative kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got a situation where we've introduced you some guys where if you run into a pre-foreclosure or somebody in default on their loan, how do you deal with that and make money? How do you monetize that kind of a deal? Boom, right here, right now. We just, Logan just dropped it right there in your lap and said, hey, this is how you do it. I'll come in and write the check, straighten it out, and you can go sell the deal. How's that?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, right?
Yeah, that's a strategy that is severely under leveraged and used out there, because it's just, you don't think of it. You don't think of how am I going to solve the debt problem, and by bringing in a third party that understands the note side of it to basically approve a short sale once you're ready, Justin.
Yeah.
You've got a number in mind. Yeah, so do I. We're already talking. We already know what numbers it's going to take, so I know what I can pay for the note. It's just now, can I convince the bank? So that is a wild card, if you say, in that scenario, is I've got to convince the bank to sell it, and typically, they're looking to move it because they're again not in the real estate business. They don't want the liability of a home.
It costs them money having a non-performing note like that, right? I mean, that keeps them from lending other monies.
Perfect. That's. So let me touch on that real quick. Why would a bank sell a loan, performing or not? And I'll give you both examples because we've bought both types. Non-performing wise, a bank, for every dollar that has been defaulted on or 90 days plus late, they have to set reserves aside in case that loan goes bad. Officially has to be written off the books, or a discount, they have to sell it. So that ties up what their business is, which is lending money. That is the core principle behind a bank looking to move a loan. If it's non-performing, you can look onto the performing side. We bought a loan out in California, an avocado farmer, in fact, or actually a strawberry farmer. And the bank didn't want the loan because they were going through a merger that they were getting out of that type of lending. It was an ag loan. So the bank that they were merging with doesn't want anything to do with ag loans.
Yeah.
So they were just looking to dump ag loans at discounts. They called me. They didn't care who they were selling to for this particular case. But I mean, I bought a loan that had been performing for 10 years at like 70 cents on the dollar, which is cheap. And we got a good deal on it, and they've been collecting payments on that one for about a year now. So there's plenty of reasons that a bank is going to move something, and it's not always obvious. So it's just trying to figure out, what's,
Sure.
What works. And
Yeah.
like I said, this happened to be a multi-state lending bank, so I was surprised that they were going to work with us. But after I learned the reasoning, it was like, okay, perfect sense. So typically, they're not just going to move things for whatever reason.
Sure.
They don't have
Sure.
Logan, I got a question for you. When you're dealing with the banks, are you dealing for the non-performing notes? Are you dealing with an REO manager like you would if you're trying to do a short sale kind of thing, or who
No.
are you talking to at the bank?
Great point. There's two separate departments typically. The smaller the bank, it's usually the one person. But when you get a little bit larger, you're probably going to be talking with somebody in the special assets, is a department it can be called. I've spoken with a treasury, risk. Trying to think of some other titles out there. Secondary marketing. Those are about the 5 or 6 key ones that I see pretty frequently. Yeah, a bank can, everybody knows that they can create their own titles for whatever positions they've got there. So don't get stuck on it. But what I like to do, rather than ask for a title, is I'll call the bank and I say, if I've got a property in mind, I'll provide the address. If I don't, and I'm just generally just trying to buy loans in bulk from them, I said, like, hey, do you guys do portfolio loans? A bank should know what a portfolio loan is. They're not selling it off after they originate it. They're keeping it in-house in their portfolio and collecting the payments. If they tell me yes, okay, great. What happens when a loan goes bad? I want them to think. I want them to think through who works with them that says, oh, that's Justin over in XYZ department that handles loans and reaches out to borrowers when they fall apart.
I quit working there, man. I don't work there anymore.
Good, because you ripped us off. So at the end of the day, it's, to me, I ask probing questions versus just a generic question sheet. Says, I'm just reading down the list. Well, if you're not this, then you got to be this. If you're not this, I have a solution that I'm trying to push upon them that they don't know yet, and I'm just simply asking questions to get to that right person. And eventually, if the bank is in the business of selling loans, then you'll get the right person. But typically it's not going to be your REO, because that's after the bank has finished the foreclosure process, has taken the property back at the auction, and is simply just probably trying to partner with an agent or with a wholesaler that's just needing to move it. So that's too far down the line. You want to get them in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure, or just what's called an non-accrual loan. Non-accrual means they've stopped trying to collect and it's over. It's a old banking term, but at the end of the day, the department is typically your special assets, secondary marketing, or risk.
So as a wholesaler, rather than wholesaling properties, you could be wholesaling loans, or
You
are
can
you
wholesale loans.
would you be a source? Like if I were, what kind of success would a wholesaler or relatively
So in the
new
business,
investor, I guess, like if I were to pick up the phone and just start calling some of the smaller banks in my area, and try to get through the right person and ask them if they would be willing to sell notes versus houses, or
so it works. I would caution you mainly because banks like dealing with the primary buyer, knowing that you're not the end buyer. Maybe it matters to them, maybe it doesn't. From my experience, it has mattered. But if you've got a bank and you're talking with them and you finally get to that right person and they say they've got loans to sell, and you're open and transparent with them to say, hey, look, I can connect you with a note buyer, and simply for your efforts, typically the wholesaler makes 1 to 3% of the transaction. So if it's a $100,000, it doesn't matter what the notes owed. That's called a $200,000 loan, but I bought it for 100 grand. I'm going to pay you 1 to 3% off that 100 grand, not what's technically owed on the balance. So, so yeah, that's definitely a strategy. Just what I would say, the problem that we have in the note business is, and I don't want to blanketly say wholesalers, but it's the wholesalers or the brokers that simply take a product from another broker, from another broker, from another broker, and are moving it. And I've already seen it 3 times. And so and I think that's with whether you're selling traditional properties or notes. I think that's an issue no matter what area of real estate you're in. But yeah, I mean, if you can get some core sellers, being banks or seller financiers, that local guys in your market that are wanting to sell loans, but you know a note buyer, being me, connect the dots, and we'll put a contract in place, and yeah, and you'll get 1 to 3% of what we
You
close.
could literally go on PropStream and filter that down to those lender transactions, and you got your list right there, right? It sounds like to me.
You can wholesale notes all day long.
There's more ways to make money in real estate than you can shake a stick at, right? I
mean, and it may not even be a percentage. Exactly. That's right. I mean, we did a deal in Michigan. We bought it was a portfolio of 4 rental properties wrapped up into one loan. The guy had missed, I think, a good year and a half behind. I knew a Michigan note buyer. I'm also a note buyer, but I also know other note buyers, and he was more interested in the deal than I was. And altogether, the properties were worth about $270,000. I got it under contract at $115 from the bank, and I wholesaled the package of notes to the end buyer for $145. I made $25,000 wholesale fee in 24 hours.
Boom! How many of you would like to do that?
Yeah,
how much money out of pocket was that?
Ever done.
How much out of pocket money did you have to put out for that?
That was zero.
Wait a minute, say that again.
Zero. Yeah, that one was one of the best deals we've ever done.
Oh, that's great.
It was so the wholesale or the end buyer sent me $145,000. I sent $115 back out to the bank, bought the loans. They sent me the loan files. I immediately assigned all the deeds and everything over to the end guy before money even changed hands, so that if the deal did go south, he was still the owner. That's one way to protect yourself as the end buyer. But just a few things working there. And yeah, all I did was move money.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's
so
super good.
At the end of the day, collected $25,000, and it was a great deal for him. He got exactly what he wanted. He wants to own more rental properties. His goal is to take the properties back, and he's working through that now. And it was a win for everybody.
Yeah, that's incredible. Some folks probably wonder why I have guests on the Shut Up Money show that are not wholesaler specific, talking about discounted cash offers or lease options or something, which is what I focus on most of the time. And the reason why is because there's so many ways to make money without outlaying money, without being wealthy. You don't have to start out rich. There's so many ways to make money in real estate that, and I bring guests on like Logan to expand our minds, like that In Vogue said, free your mind and the rest will follow. Right.
Right. Exactly.
So we're freeing our minds today, taking off some of the limitations and some of the blinders, like the horse races, the horses, they wear those blinders so they can't see what's over here and what's over here. They don't get distracted off of this one technique, this one thing they're focused on. But, that may be for you, like he said earlier, wholesaling may be a way for you to move into something like this that you will enjoy and maybe fit your purpose even more.
Right.
He was a landlord. He was, doing some fixing and flipping. I've done some fixing and flipping and I hate it. It's one of the easiest ways for me to develop ulcers and end up in a rubber room somewhere. I have a property that I was rehabbing last year. It was broken into 5 times last year. The last time it was broken into, they ripped the security system off the wall and stole the cameras. Okay, so go figure.
To protect it, they stole that too.
The shit I paid for to keep them out is the shit they wanted most.
Yeah.
That and the stove. So I've had some problems, and I've discovered that fixing and flipping is just not for me. There's being a landlord. I've tried that, and I've discovered that's just not for me, because I didn't like getting phone calls on a Sunday afternoon that the dishwasher and this and other things weren't working right, and they were also going to be late on the rent. And talk about also developing an ulcer. I mean, that's a tough one. And sandwich lease options can be tough too, for the same reason. And that's why I always tell people to have a little cushion, have a little emergency fund. But I discovered those things aren't for me. I just love being a wholesaler. But it could have just as easily been note investing, or it could have been some other strategy. And Logan really brings out an excellent point, guys, that to allow yourself to evolve, to grow, free your mind, let the rest follow, go where the path leads you, because there's so many ways that you can be effective here in real estate. Logan, I really appreciate you being on here today. Share with us again how we can get in touch with you, how we can buy your book or your next course or whatever it is, man, because I'm interested more in notes. And
absolutely. And one thing I did forget to mention earlier is my mentor and colleague now. I'll be a guest or a co-host on an upcoming podcast with Dan Zatowski, Passive to Prosperous. So we're getting ready to launch that, and feel free to check us out there. Dan's got a Facebook group out there for you if you want to join. It's a podcast about mindset. It's a podcast about real estate. I mean, that's the core of how we both have got it to where we are. But you can check us out there once that gets launched. My website again is sagenotesinc.com, and email address is on the site, but feel free to reach out to me directly with Logan Hassinger at sagenotesinc.com.
Excellent. Yeah, feel free to, guys, especially feel free to when you run across these deals where they fit the parameters. It's a homeowner or an investor that's got a package of notes that he's developed over time. I've run into them, guys, and you will too. You stay in the business long enough and you'll dial that phone one time and it'll be somebody on the other end that fits that exact situation, and you'll wish you'd remembered what Logan's name and email address is. So write it down and keep it with some of the others we introduced to you. Logan, you've been a great guest, man. Thank you so much. And
not a problem. I'll jump on with you guys anytime. I mean, I can. At the end of the day, for me, it's like you said, whether it's notes, whether it's rental properties, wholesaling, commercial leasing, anything, development. To me, it really comes down to mindset. And if you know what you want, and there's really nothing that can get in your way to stop you. It's just about education, partnering with the right people, getting a mentor in place, and learning from the best, and taking steps to move forward. It's real easy right now to have some excuses.
Sure it is.
I get it. And, there's, I've got friends of mine that have lost their jobs, and, looking around to say, what's next. And what's next is just an application to a job, or in real estate, it's, making that next phone call, or calling that next bank, or moving on to the next deal. I mean, just keep your head up. I mean, it's easy to say. It's much more harder to do, but that's why I'm that's why I think I'm as successful as I think I am, is because I continue to make actionable steps versus sitting back. I mean, we've had a tenant rip apart a unit that we just put $15,000 in, that I had to turn around and put another $15,000 in. I could have said, "Oh, this is stupid," and left.
I would have.
Real estate could piss me off so much where I just never returned.
I'd have tried to find somebody that could burn it down at night while I was asleep or something.
There'd be a key and a check under the mat. So that's all I would say at the end of the day is, yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you got any questions, note related or real estate related. I'll try to do my best to either answer it or B, connect you with somebody that I think is an expert in that field. So
You're a great guy, a great asset to have here in the club, man. I appreciate you, and I know you didn't ask to be in the club, but I put you in the club, man. You're in my club.
Yeah, I'm always looking for ways to learn more, and that's it's huge. You get surrounded by people that are like-minded, and the sky should be the limit for everybody in the group.
Absolutely, yeah. Stay in motion, guys. Don't
Yep.
give up. Keep your head up. Keep stepping. Keep moving forward. Remember that you are ultimately in control, right? You really are. You are in control of how you see things, how you do things, and what happens, the results that you have in your life. And it's a great reminder from Logan. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely,
And,
guys.
everybody out there, God bless you. You guys have a great week. Thanks for joining me here.
You
Oh yeah,
too.
anytime, man.
Thank you, guys.
Hope you guys got some value there.
Okay. Yep. We'll talk to you guys soon. You guys have a blessed weekend. We'll see you again next week.
Good
All right,
deal. You
have a
too.
good weekend.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Yeah.